Instrumental Transcommunication. It was devised by Professor Ernst Senkowski, a German professor of physics. When the contacts extrapolated from the voices and became also visual and computer texts and so on. But what it is indeed, it's contacts apparently with another dimension of life through electronic means, electronic means. And these contacts can be, as I said, voices, which is my field, the voices, or computer texts, spontaneous in many instances, otherwise upon request by the operators, and visual. I mean, through a feedback method, which is rather complicated to be. It's not complicated, but it's written everywhere. If you search for the Schreiber method, you focus a video camera on the screen of a computer or a TV. Better a computer, it's easier, and it reflects what the video camera is catching, and then the video camera captures it again and again, transmits it. And through this, spots are formed, and in some of these spots, it's called, as I said, the Schreiber, Klaus Schreiber was the operator in Germany, deceased many years ago, who started this method, instructed by his deceased daughter, Karine. But I myself have used it and had also had results. There are other ways, but these are the classical ones, let's put it this way, yeah? Then there are the water and the steam and so on. I don't know those methods. I've not practiced them, but the Schreiber method, yes, as it is written in my books, I have done it, and I had images. Although, because I had at the time so many voices, so plentiful, that I really decided to leave the images, because it's a very time-consuming method. You have to see frame by frame. In this, you can film, I think it's 1,500 frames in 1 minute. So you see, if you have to watch one by one, giving it proper view, this takes a long time. So I decided to devote myself and all my capacity of work and of listening to the voices and to the information they conveyed about the next dimension of life, what they say, it's the next dimension of life. And I left the images, didn't continue experimenting with the images, but many people do, and they have results. Anyway, so this is what it is. It's instrumental transcommunication, is instrumental through instruments, of course, but electronic instruments, because if we go instruments, also the Ouija boards are also an instrument and so on, isn't it? This is not what ITC is, and I told Professor Senkowski this, and he agreed. But he said, well, at the time, I didn't think about it. I would prefer electronic transcommunication, you see, because that's what it is. But anyway, it has been now taken as ITC, and it will be ITC.
Absolutely. So how long has ITC been used as a method of communication for what we'd call the other side or the other dimension?
Exactly. Since Friedrich Jürgensen, who recorded the first voices in 1959, 12th of June. And since then there was Dr. Konstantin Raudive, whom you probably have heard of. Breakthrough, I must have it here. One moment, because I wrote the preface to this book. Here it is. It's the newest edition. See? Yeah?
I recognise the cover.
Yeah. So this is a huge book, but excellent, excellent. It's really the analysis of a scientist that he was, of the discipline that he practiced, and in which he obtained results, Konstantin Raudive. And that's how it started, with Friedrich Jürgensen, followed by his disciple, Konstantin Raudive, and then many others, until it reached its peak with the couple Maggie and Jules Hartfischbach in Luxembourg. And then Adolf Holmes, the German operator in Germany, who exceptionally obtained over 300 computer texts with all kinds of information, all kinds, about, well, existential matters, all kinds of information. Whatever you think of, it's there in Adolf Holmes' computer texts. 300, around 300. Some information conveyed through the computer texts was upon request by Professor Senkowski, who also lived in Germany. Others appeared spontaneously on his computer screen. And then we have, well, in the 1970s, Marcello Bacci with the direct radio voices, yes, only direct radio voices, like me, although I started by the images and obtained some, but I could continue. Only because I didn't have the time, not that I didn't like it, no, but it needs such a great amount of time, and I was working at the time, and I couldn't do it. I could do both. I had to decide between
Absolutely.
the images and so I decided for the voices, because I wanted to apprehend the information, which I did, from the next dimension. And mine are also, like Bacci's voices, the direct radio voices. I mean, my communicators speak to me, and there are many voices that I received from a station that they called Rio do Tempo, time stream, which corresponds to the time stream in Luxembourg. That's how they called their station in Luxembourg. Here, they called it Rio do Tempo, which is the same thing, but translated into Portuguese. So mine were the direct radio voices, many voices. And I used to ask questions, and they would reply to me. Not always. Sometimes they said, we're not allowed to reply to that, or whatever, I can't remember now, but often they did. And in my books that I have published on the subject of ITC, many of this information is published. And in one of these books, I think it's the last one, Glimpses of Another World, Impressions and Reflections of an EVP Operator, I compare my information, the information I received, to the information received by the most reputable ITC operators, and they are the Harsch-Fischbach and Luxembourg, and Adolf Holmes in Germany. So, and there is a correspondence, it matches. This is very important, of course. And that's just in a few words to say what the main results are.
Absolutely. So how does one go about setting up an experiment with ITC or with EVP, as you focus on, which is electronic voice phenomenon?
Exactly. You always start by setting up an experiment for EVP. You really, for radio, direct radio voices, it depends mostly on the communicators. If they can communicate with you through the direct radio. In many cases, they cannot, because your whatever personality, thoughts, ideas do not match theirs, those that are communicating. This is important, this resonance, this affinity. Yeah. So you set up an experiment for EVP, and then the direct radio voices come, or they don't come ever, see? By providing a source of noise. I always used radios for my experiments. Radios tuned in frequencies where a human voice was never audible, yeah? No radio emissions, otherwise it's a big confusion. Some people do use radio emissions, I do not, I never did. And so, as a matter of fact, my radios were tuned in frequencies reserved for the state use, where no voices can enter. No radio ham, no voices, only emergency situations, earthquakes and so on. These are the frequencies for state use only. So you, as I said, you can use any type of noise you want for EVP experiments. Let's say water noise. Some people like to put running water noise. I have done it also. The wind, if it's not too strong. If it is too strong, it gets into the microphone. Traffic noise, if it's not too loud. If it's a bus, zzz. You can record EVP without any background noise, but it's not so easily obtained, the voices without, in total silence, because as the communicators have said, they manipulate the available noise and transform it into a kind, I underline, a kind of human voice. It's not human because it's not human, obviously.
Because it's made as an artifact of the sound that's in the background.
Exactly, it's exactly that. And so I always used radios tuned in shortwave. Yeah, shortwave. No, as I said, no voices ever. No human voices ever. And then we go back to the EVP experiment. But if you want to use other sources of noise, of course you can. But then you will not expect or hope for direct radio voices, because as the word says, direct radio is through a radio, isn't it? And then you sit there in silence, a quiet place, where you can take note and write down on a writing pad or wherever you want, or an electronic device, every noise that during your experiment happened, like the door. Somebody knocked the door, or the dog barked, or television is in the other room. That's not advisable, of course, because the television has human voices. Then you sit there and you address your invisible communicators with respect, with an open heart, with I don't like the word because it has been so misused, but with good vibrations inside ones, you know. And you are there in silence, you make one question, you wait 1 or 2 minutes, you make another 1 or 2 minutes, taking note of all the noises that were produced in the environment, and then another 1, 5 or 6 is enough or plenty. And then you finish the experiment, you thank the communicators, and exactly as if you were speaking to a person that you were seeing, that you were looking at. And thank them, and that's it. And then when you can, and your head is quiet and in a quiet environment also, you listen to the session, to what you recorded. Of course, you are recording while you are doing this. Of course, you are recording. Then you listen very carefully. It's true that my voices were very loud always from the beginning. And there were knocks like this that were not produced, but they appeared recorded. Like that, before the voices, usually. And if one day, suddenly, as it happened to me, one of those radios, which is tuned in frequencies where there is no human voice, starts replying to you, you normally ask questions. Of course, you say, is there someone who would like to speak with me? Or you may address, I don't know, for example, your grandfather or your father, it depends, or somebody whom you like and you would like to, I ask for the protection of my father or my brother or my dog, if you like him very much, as I do. And then you are there. And then suddenly a voice replies to you and addresses you and calls your name. And then these are the direct radio voices. That's what happened to me. And since then, which happened, I started in January 1998. And on the 11th of March 1998, the direct radio voices started. And they never stopped, really. So
perfect. So many people, especially of the upcoming generations, maybe my age, slightly older and below, their first encounters with EVPs are most likely going to be from television shows or YouTube dramas, which
are very unrecommendable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even those that seem genuine, of course, with television and the internet, you can never tell which are genuine or not. They often come across as somebody who records the sound. It's a very vague, crackly voice at best, and then an interpretation of what that is saying. And it's often a big stretch to say what you're hearing is what you think you're hearing.
Exactly.
So,
I know all that,
yeah,
Darren.
so
Exactly. You're absolutely right.
So what is the difference between that kind of EVP and the genuine scientific research into ITC and EVP?
It is that those supposed EVPs most of the times are nothing of the sort. They are pure pareidolia, which means delusions, isn't it?
Yes, the human intention or the human ability to see something in nothing.
Projects meaning and so on.
Yeah.
And
we see patterns.
Ghost hunting programs are totally unrecommendable because there is this sometimes it's cheating on the spectators, other times it's just what I said, pareidolia. Not all.
We must remember that these programs are designed as entertainment, not as research.
It's as entertainment, and it should not be entertainment, of course. And then real voices, you can, for instance, listen to them in my website. Those are voices without any sound manipulation whatsoever. It's their original. I put original. When I write original under one of those voices, it is original. I didn't do denoising or noise cleaning or nothing. It is the original. And so I have many examples there. www.itcjournal.org. Org, the organization.
ORG, yeah.
ORG, exactly. ORG. Here in Spain, it's a big confusion. They don't speak any English normally at all, so you get all mixed up if you want to say the things correctly. So there I have many examples of very good voices, very loud, very clear. And in the original, I mean, they were not
processed,
noise clean, nothing, or equalized, nothing. Because when I write original, it is original, as I recorded it, yeah?
Many in the scientific field outside of what they would consider paranormal phenomena or parapsychology would consider anything parapsychological, including ITC, to be, as they would say, pseudoscientific and not genuine, I suppose, not genuinely indicative of some world beyond ours, outside of coincidence or fraud, or etc., etc. What would you say to that kind of assessment?
I will say that I have done experiments published in a peer-reviewed scientific journal, Neuroquantology, where I and other operators that I invited to take part in the experiments obtained voices. And this is under totally controlled conditions, acoustically and electromagnetically shielded laboratory, in this case, a lab in a university, and with a sound engineer who is now retired. He's British, Philip Newell. And when he used to live very near me, but he went back to the United Kingdom, Philip, and he was the top sound engineer in the world, Philip Newell. And he was there supervising the experiments. And we obtained voices. And I published this report. It was a 2-year investigation in neuroquantology. And also said that these voices, these recordings are available for anybody who wants to analyze, any scientist or non-scientist who wants to analyze and to check it. Do you think that one wrote to me asking for a sample? Not one. Not one wrote to me. Why they are not interested? This is the main cause. Why are not they? Because they are not interested. It's the paradigm, and they don't want to break the paradigm. Because the paradigm is their source of living.
Very true, which is a shame, because when science is equated to that paradigm, science should be the process, not the paradigm. It's the process of discovery.
The truth.
Yes.
That's what science is. No, most of them are not interested in the truth. They are only interested in prolonging their own ideas about the truth, which is different, not in exploring the truth.
Indeed. So,
or the evidence.
Yes.
Put it this
absolutely. So what kind of messages have you received yourself through your own experimentation? How so? For example, the accuracy, the quality of the sound. What kind of messages have you had through during your experiments?
Many messages. About what? You tell me, I will reply, because
So yeah.
it's valid.
So I suppose those that, as kind of someone of a scientific mindset myself, I'd be looking for messages that are evidential, that show some form of evidence that they are genuinely from the other side. So what kind of messages would you say have you had that have been especially impressive evidentially for you?
As I said, these experiments, a two-year investigation of the anomalous electronic voices, or EVP, which was done throughout 2 years in a university acoustic lab, and which yielded results. So this, you can't hope for much more than this, because one thing is my voice is in my studio in this house. Another thing is the voices we obtained in an acoustically shielded, electromagnetically shielded environment at a university, supervised by perhaps at the time the best sound engineer in Europe, Philip Newell. What else do you want
so
to see?
The fact that voices have been produced when in a situation where no voices should be produced to begin with.
At all,
yes.
exactly.
And I suppose
exactly.
if they are meaningful messages as well, that adds to the evidential value in and of itself. Exactly.
If you get into neuroquantology, I think the issue is September. I remember, I think the year is 2010. I'm not sure. But I'm not sure if it's 10 or 2012. I know 12, because some journalist interviewed me to commemorate the publication of that study. Just a couple of months ago, he interviewed me. You will see they are all meaningful. Why? Because they all correspond, match my or the other operators' observations or commentaries, because we did there what I do here at my studio in my house, which is what I described to you for the EVPs. So we did it this way. Philip Newell controlled all the devices, all the environment. There were no extraneous sounds at all. Nobody said a word whatsoever, and the voices. I mean, the content. That's what you are speaking of. The content matches what, in this case, I or another operator spoke into the air, but to invisible communicators.
Yes.
They replied to the questions.
So the content was related to what was asked of them.
Exactly. Yeah. These are the good EVPs. It has to be like that.
Yes.
Not just nonsensical words. Because it was related. To the point that one of the operators, who is from here in Spain, that I invited because I had been invited to direct this study, one of the operators addressed a message. It's very interesting. To his deceased dog, whose name I forgot, but it's in the recording. And 3 barks appeared. He asked therefore for some sign of that she lives, that she had survived the physical death, or that she was well. I don't remember what he asked, but it was in this field. He said, just a sign of consolation, he said, something like this, for my grief. And there were these 3 barks, you know.
So I wonder,
this was...
it seems interesting that the species, I suppose, even of the person that passed over seems to retain that kind of language that they. I mean, maybe the dog gave through the bark so that the person knew it was the dog. But it is, if, for instance, you're trying to contact someone Spanish, will they always reply in Spanish? Do they kind of retain the language and the language that they had before they died, or?
No, normally they do. Normally they do. Normally they reply in the language of the operator, or as it happened with Friedrich Jürgensen, who spoke 6 languages. This was the very first beginning. There were no EVP before Friedrich Jürgensen. Yes, there were Attila von Sley in the United States, but sporadic, few words recorded in a mediumistic session, wasn't it? But Jürgensen spoke several languages. Then his voices, I have them and have listened to them many times. Sometimes have different, although he was Swedish, born in Odessa, Russia, but and knew Italian, English, German, something else, I don't remember, Russian, yeah. So there were a couple of words, let's say in Swedish, then another word in Russian, then another word in German, and so on, that he could understand. And that together made sense. And Jürgensen very brilliantly said, this is one of the ways that my communicators have to prove that they are not a normal radio emission. Because who would think of a radio emission? He was the first to receive direct radio voices. Who would think of a radio emission with 1 word in Russian, 2 in German, 1 in English, another one in Italian? Yes? No, nobody. No radio emission would do that. This is my little cat, and if she gets into the computer, yes, Cleo.
I love cats. Unfortunately, I'm allergic to them, but I've always loved cats. I love all animals. I've got
She's Cleopatra.
Cleopatra, bless her. I've got little Cody, my little dog. We lost. Yeah. We had 2 miniature schnauzers, but we lost them both a couple of years ago on the same day. And I actually got.
Oh my goodness!
It was difficult.
Why? An accident?
No, just coincidental timing. Ty, who was the oldest, had kidney failure, and we knew he was approaching the end. Yeah. We took our second dog, Omi, to the vets to get his teeth cleaned, and coincidentally, they came back that day and said his liver's riddled with tumours, and he's really struggling. So we had to make that decision to put them down together, which was the way they would have, if one had gone and the other had survived, the survivor would have been in terrible grief. They'd always been together, so they went together, which is nice.
That's a very interesting situation that you are telling me, because it must be connected.
Yeah,
they wanted it that way, and the universe allowed them.
Everything was absolutely perfect, and after that, I had communications from them, which is the first time I've ever had communications. My favourite animal has always been the fox. I've always loved foxes, and I'm writing a book about them actually at the moment. And where we'd lived in the same place for 25 years. I'd never seen a fox. And I remember after Ty and Omi had died, our 2 dogs had died, I said to them, because I was doing the research that I'm doing at the moment, and I said to them, if you're able, send me a fox, because I've never seen them. After that, I saw 3 foxes in 4 weeks.
My goodness.
Just around the local area. Never seen them in 25 years.
Before.
Yeah. And I thought,
Very
okay,
good.
very interesting indeed. And that was nice to know that they are still there to some degree.
Very good. How do you address them? Through EVP?
No, I just spoke to them as I do now,
mentally.
just mentally, yeah, and just say, yeah.
Oh, yeah, they perceive it, of course.
Yes, which is interesting because as well, going back to the EVP and general communication, many people would think that wouldn't be possible because talking to dogs don't have the ability to understand what you're saying to them, at least complex language.
They do. They have telepathic understanding, yes. And my dog, Nisha, Doberman, my Nisha replied to me, I adore Doberman. I just
they're lovely
adore
dogs. They're lovely dogs.
I adore them. I don't like anybody more than my dogs, to say the truth. But Nisha spoke to me with a human voice. It's also in my website and original.
This was through EVP?
Through EVP? No, through direct radio.
Oh, direct radio. Mm-hmm.
Direct radio. Yeah. Wonderful.
So
wonderful.
I wonder why...
How else, but just let me say this. How else could she communicate with me acoustically? If I don't understand her barking, she could have told me this in a barking, but I don't understand it. So she used human language. Cleo, she's going to break this connection completely. You see, she has done it. Cleo, let's go.
We're still here.
Yeah, you are, but I can't see you.
Maybe we closed the window.
She closed the window. Wait. Sorry. Nick Kelly. No, Nick Kelly Zoom. No, that's this one.
There we go.
So Nisha replied to me, and it was kind of a long sentence. But before that, my communicators from the station, Rio do Tempo, had already told me that she had learned to communicate through the radio and that she wanted to speak with me. They told me, anonymous voices, as they sometimes are. And then that day, suddenly, this happened. And it is most incredible thing, to tell you the truth. Wonderful. But you are right, because, I mean, thoughts are perceived in the next dimension as if they were words. In this dimension of written messages. Yeah? Ways.
That's quite curious as to why the researcher that you mentioned earlier, who got a communication from his dog, got it through as barks on the direct radio communication.
Yeah, 3 barks.
3 barks. So I wonder why he received them as barks rather than as you did, as understandable words.
Because this colleague of mine never received direct radio voices, only EVP. And these barks were through EVP also. At the university, it was, at the acoustic lab of the university. But we didn't, at the university, only in one instance, there was a direct radio voice, because I had taken a small radio, which occasionally could be tuned, one of the experiments. And there was a direct radio voice, but the rest was always with the instruments of the university, and there were no radios, there was nothing really. There were only the recorders of very high quality, of course. They are the School of Engineering. And the replies were all EVPs that we got there at university. And for this operator, whom I know well, it was the 3 barks were in EVP form, because we could only hear them when we rewound the recording,
Yes, and played
which
it back.
was played it back, yes, when it was a very sophisticated recorder that belonged and belongs, I suppose, now they must have more modern ones, to the university. Not my devices at all, no. And to me, Nisha, she replied here in my studio through the radio. I was already receiving direct radio voices. It's a different situation also. I did not address Nisha or any of my other dogs during these experiments, but this friend of mine, he did. He addressed his dog, his deceased female dog. And there were these 3 barks. Give me a sign that you leave or something. I can't remember, but it is in the report. And this was very good, I think. But different situation from mine, because then after Nisha, I have received direct and EVP voices, both, from many of my dogs. The Doberman were my dogs. All the others were abandoned dogs that I recovered, that I sheltered at my house and recovered. But from those also, I have received not messages like Nisha. No, Nisha is a long message, but their names, saying their names. I am so. One of them was so. He appears maybe in 50 recordings. I am so. I am a dog, he says. I think, he also says, you know. So I am a dog, I think, says so, who was a dog whom I found dying of hunger on a road. Called him so, because I had to build a special enclosure for him, separated from the Doberman, of course. Anybody who knows a Doberman will understand this. And so, which means alone, was called so because he was alone. And he spoke so many times. And well, with these things short, but it's very interesting. It's such a long story. I have much less energy these days because the years go by. And before I was an extremely energetic person. I still am, but not in the same proportion as I was before. And this ITC work demands a lot of energy from you. As I think, this is my thought, and I am not reproducing anybody's opinion, my own, not even corroborated by my communicators. My communicators have said that, well, let's call it vibrations. It's a bad word because it has been so misused by New Age things, right, and so on. But they said the vibrations of the operator and the communicators have to match, to correspond. But I personally think that these messages, especially the direct radio voices, are very connected also to the Earth operator's energy. Yeah. This what Wilhelm Reich called orgone energy, isn't it?
Yes, orgone energy, yeah.
Yes, I think it's very much connected to this. So if you kind of this, I do not know the process at all. Well, I'm not a physicist, although I wish I were, but I am not. But certainly, if it is kind of a life force in a way, the orgone energy, isn't it? Of course, with the years, it will get subdued, it will get less strong, less intense. And I think that is related to because at the beginning and for many years, not now, my voice this is a very big house, my house, and I have a huge house, a huge garden, 3,000 square meters. So the voices were here, produced in a small room, which I made into a studio in the back of my house. I am now in the front, above the garden, and they could be heard at the end of the garden. They were so strong. Sometimes when I passed them from my recorder into my computer, I had to lower them, otherwise they would be unbearable, you see? So very strong. I think this is connected. I think, but this is my opinion. Not there. Never ask them this. I suppose it is, but I'm not sure. It's related to this life force, capacity, and which with the years must become less, obviously. Otherwise, how could you know? It's the natural process of life here in this world, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
So
what kind of descriptions do you have, or have you and other researchers received that talk about the nature of life over on the other, so after our physical death, the environments, the ways they work, that kind of thing?
Yeah. Many descriptions, like although in a strange semantic ways, which are characteristic of these ITC communications. For instance, one of them just says, "Oh, we have another world, not word, world. We have another way." And I said, another way for what? And then they replied, I do not remember the words, but I know the content. Said other values. Said, which kind of values? Our values? I said, no, different values. They asked. They replied, which are, of course, ethical, of a different kind. We have another world. We have another way. And so many replies by other words in this sense. And so they have said that the essence, that's what you asked, isn't it, of life, is spiritual. But we here in the earth are not aware of it. We think that it is physical, but it is not. The physical form is just an instrument. Yeah, here. So, because the real nature is transcendental, it is spiritual. That's what they said, among other things. Many.
Yes, I can imagine, because I imagine a lot of people will think, coming at this without that understanding, will come at it thinking, well, how can we exist after we die and see without eyes, hear without ears, exist at all without a brain working? You know, that's how most people would think. So how would you describe what you understand about that?
It's that, that the brain does not produce consciousness, does it? No, the brain does not produce consciousness. And all beings in this world, plants, minerals also, I suppose, never asked about this, but I asked about the other ones, possess consciousness. Consciousness is, there is no life if there is no consciousness, but it's not the brain. The brain, again, is an instrument for that consciousness to manifest. So trees have another brain, like Stefano Mancuso, the professor of plant neurology at the University of Florence. She's the most important research unit on plant neurology, demonstrated and published in a beautiful, very understandable book, Brilliant Green. They have consciousness. And they apparently they have no brain, certainly not a brain like the human brain, or the dog's brain, or the chicken's brain, yeah, or the bee's brain. But they have consciousness, and they could communicate among themselves, yeah, trees and plants, every kinds of plants, insects, and so on. So this is the premise is wrong. How do you communicate without a brain? You know that I can't remember the word now, but these children and not children who have lived without a brain, it was
hydrocephalus.
hydrocephalus.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they had no brain, and they still could do everything.
Mm-hmm.
They still could.
They could
live
and properly and
be
function.
conscious.
Yeah.
So that's just the
Dogs
primary.
Mm-hmm.
Is there?
Yeah.
You have another one?
He doesn't like being picked
Hello.
up. Yeah, this is Cody.
Hello,
This is,
how old is he?
He's 2. He's a little miniature schnauzer.
He's 2, schnauzer.
Schnauzer cross spaniel.
Yeah, but they have a lot of character, don't they?
They do. They certainly do. You do, don't you?
I know. hello, doggy.
He doesn't like being picked up.
Yeah. Oh, yes, of course. They are very. All animals, non-human, are so pure.
They are very much so. I've always said.
And
I've always said we can learn a lot more from animals than we can from other people.
Absolutely, exactly. Even from scientists, certainly from.
Well, from scientists and from schools, we can learn how to live as humans, but from animals, we can learn how to live as life. Yeah.
Exactly. One of the teachings that were conveyed at Luxembourg to these exceptional operators, who, as a matter of fact, were only the recipients of what the next world instructed them to do. If you read them, Maggie Harsch-Fischbach and Dr. Theo Locher, who was the president of the Swiss Parapsychology Foundation, who witnessed the contact. She was just a school teacher in Luxembourg, and they had messages from the highest beings. Among them, one being of a different nature, as it. I will say it without gender, itself defined. I mean, said that it was. I was never a human. I was never an animal. I have never been incarnated. I am a spiritual being of a different nature. So they called him the technicians because he told them how to set up the devices to receive these extraordinary contacts. And one of the things he said there in Luxembourg was a pure mind and a pure heart are an important requisite to receive our contacts. Yes, it didn't say the only requisite. It said an important requisite to receive our contacts. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it seems a lot of communications, spontaneous or triggered via EVP or whatever else, seem to be reliant on being open to them. Certainly.
Exactly. Also, of course, Darren. Yeah, certainly. Of course. Otherwise, you meet a wall, isn't it? These thoughts, which through the radio are transformed into human-sounding words, they hit a wall, isn't it? You know.
I know what you mean.
So, yeah, there has to be this channel, this open channel. as you said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So do you think eventually modern science will catch up to accept these phenomena and begin to discover how the other side works?
I think so. How long it will take, I do not know. But I think so. And indeed, the ITC communicators in Luxembourg, again, I come back to Luxembourg because they were the top of these contacts, said, the communicator said, quantum physics will discover our world. Yeah. And so and they also said science will reach our world one day. They didn't say when, that's true. But one day.
Something that's been in a lot of people's minds recently has been the question of UFOs and extraterrestrials. Have you ever had any hints regarding the existence of other forms of life, I suppose?
As a matter of fact, I did not, because I never asked. I never asked about that, because that was not my interest. My interest was really to understand a little bit better their world and their dimension, beyond time, as they told me. We are from another dimension. We are from beyond time. These were the exact words. So, no, I did not ask about UFOs. So I don't know. But I suppose that, of course, as there are, however, in Luxembourg, they said, in our world, their dimension, whatever you want to call it, level, for instance, we have beings from other worlds, not only from the earth, from other worlds, who transited into that new dimension. So, yeah, that's very possible, very probable. Why not?
So do you think...
But to me, no.
No.
Yes, sorry.
So do you think that if the wider population were to understand these lessons from ITC and from communications of the other side, that there would be kind of a general relief from the fear of death and the fear of the unknown?
That's what Friedrich Jürgensen aimed at. It was that situation, to free humanity from that fear, which in itself is so, how do I say, it causes so many problems.
It's very restrictive, yes.
Restrictive, causes many difficulties, many handicaps, many... Yes.
It's very detrimental to well-being.
Exactly, very, very. But I think so, but perhaps not fully. It depends on the person also, because there are people that will, even if they are sure of this, they are certain of this reality or this side of reality, let's put it in a better way, this perspective of reality, which is this next dimension, they will still not be able to overcome the vision of death,
yes,
which is a corpse.
And I would also fear what those who are of orthodox religious views would think about these communications. If they were to know they were genuine, they would think possibly that it's from the devil or it's an illusion and that it's visions of hell, etc.
And those things, exactly. Those all invented things by humans. Ask a dog and they will not be afraid of hell, Doesn't even know what it is because it doesn't exist. What perhaps exists, and I'm sure it does, are different in this next dimension, different levels of life. Not all correspond to this or belong better to this higher level. Some are still in a lower level, although they are in the next dimension. Yeah.
So it's
One thing
not really a concept very different from as we understand life here. Many people will live on different levels in different situations here as well.
And even here also people who live in different mental levels, for instance,
Exactly.
also consciousness levels. But I think in the next world, next dimension, in a way that is more, how do I say, more striking perhaps, because here it's all mixed up, isn't it? Your neighbor can be a murderer, or a dog murderer, or a human murderer, whatever. And you deal with him. You cross him on the street every day. He's near you.
So over there, it's more the levels are more localized. Yeah.
It's separated. Yes, that they have told me, myself personally. Yeah.
So how has your work influenced your own fears and thoughts on death? And do you look forward to transferring over?
I do, just like Friedrich Jürgens. He looked forward to it, but he stayed until the last moment. Although he was very, very ill with a heart condition, he never wanted treatment. He said, well, no, I don't need that. I'm curious, he said.
Yeah.
And so he died. I have a great admiration and love for Friedrich Jürgens. I'm going to show you the only one of his books that is translated, but you can download it free from the internet. I got this, I have it in a plastic bag because I don't want it to be spoiled. I adore it, but so it is here. Voice Transmissions with the Deceased. It was published by the Jürgensen, can you see it? By the Jürgensen Foundation. And it's a wonderful book, the only one that was translated into English. I even knew one of these translators whom I met in the United States, George Wilde. Here he is. It was published in 2004, Stockholm, 2004, by the Jürgensen Foundation. But you download it from the internet. It's an invaluable book. Wonderful. Voice transmissions with the deceased. So I am in a similar position. When it comes, it comes. To Jürgensen, it came when he was sleeping.
Which is the most perfect solution.
Yeah. And then there are other stories that I told Professor Senkowski in Luxembourg about after he died, this I being said he was one of us. He came back home. Now he's sleeping in the next world. And then they said he will transit into the 5th dimension, not the 3rd, as our communicators are, but he is obviously a very spiritually oriented, high-level being, this Friedrich Jürgensen. There will be others.
Have you ever thought about what you would want to do once you cross over onto the other side? Because from what I know, there is different activities and work people can still do over there. I don't know much about it, but have you ever had thoughts about that?
I want to rest. Cross over to rest first, please. Please, to rest.
It's difficult over here.
I'm so tired all the time. I'm the president of an animal shelter. And between the dogs that appear there in horrible condition, and my ITC work and other work, and my household work, and the cats, and my dog, Finito, I'm so tired, and the ITC work.
takes a lot of energy.
And the interviews, and you know. So I'm so tired. This first, I need to rest, and then perhaps work in ITC also from that side, and also welcome and console mistreated animals.
Yes, because they would certainly need a friendly face after their times here.
Well, yes, and that worries me a lot, you know. But some of them go through here; it's undescribable.
It's ridiculous. Yeah.
But Darren, when, and just to finish, perhaps, when years ago, yes, it's 7/11. Years ago, there was a very famous fado singer in Portugal. Fado, you know, fado, the national. Well, some call it the national song. I don't. Yeah, I like it, not extremely, but anyway. She was well known all over the world. Amalia, if you are too young to remember Amalia. Amalia, she was considered the top voice of the fado. And she died when I was already here in this house. And I was already receiving Rio do Tempo direct radio voices contact. Perhaps in 1999, year 1999, she died. I'm not sure. Can check in the internet. Many things about her. But I was sad because she had been in my house in the United States when I lived there. I knew her personally. She has, because she still does. The voice is everywhere. A magnificent voice, and I was very sad. So I asked my communicators exactly what you are asking me. When Amalia, she had died the day before, let's say, what will reaches your world? What will she do there? And they said, because there is a period of rest between this world and the next one, isn't it? When Amalia reaches our world, she will sing in Rio de Tempo. I said, that's perfect, because that's what
that's what she'd love to do.
That's what she liked. That's what she wanted. That's what she did best above everything else. She will sing. Of course she will sing. I thought this was a wonderful reply, yeah.
You mentioned a period of rest. That's something I haven't heard before. I usually look at things like near-death experiences and experiences like that, where people just come out of their body and straight away move on to the next life or the next dimension. So what have you heard about this rest?
You see, let me see if I can tell you exactly what I think without making a mistake. Okay. Those people that you say go through a near-death experience, they did not die, did they? No, they did not die because they came back, yeah? Or they were resuscitated, whatever. Okay. So they say, describe you this tunnel, what they've seen, and so on. They had a vision, apparently they had a vision of that next dimension, but it didn't stay there. So this period of rest, as we are told, we ITC operators, is between this and the next world. They had a vision, but they returned. They didn't stay there.
So they had a glimpse of what the world was to be, but
exactly. But they were not really dead. If they were dead, they would be buried or cremated, of course. So they had a glimpse, exactly, but did not remain there.
So what they saw may have been accurate as to what they will experience when they die, but only after. For sure.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. In many cases, yes, because there are also cases of how do I say, very desperate near-death experience, aren't there? There are cases of the bad near that experience.
Yes. Negative, yes, very.
Negative, that's the word. Didn't come to me, yeah. So, well, this is, we can't, we shouldn't want all this to be plain and clear, because it can't be, not for now. Besides, as they also have told us, we are not prepared for this, to understand all these processes, all these ways. So
yes, I can imagine.
We can't know everything, you know, Darren. We can't know everything.
No, and I think, as you say, we're not designed to be able to cope with that. Because I'd imagine the world beyond, far beyond the science as we understand it to be, would be so different to anything we can imagine. It would be like living in an alien world with different values, different civilizations, different understandings of morality and life,
different beings,
different laws,
other worlds,
different laws of physics entirely.
Different laws. They told me, but there are many laws. They also told me, and some don't allow them to communicate or to reply to certain questions, as it happened to me, for instance, to me. We are not allowed to reply to that, they have told me. Yeah, permission is very important, and hierarchies also, but they are hierarchy,
yeah.
Hierarchies of a different kind also. So everything is of a different kind. Once I asked, what does your world look like? And they said, a world very similar to yours, but much more beautiful. But beautiful was said in a sense that it comprised everything. Yeah? Not only beauty, physical beauty, which I'm sure it also is.
I think it must be difficult to describe something indescribable in human words.
Exactly.